Yo, this hot, this the spot, there it is pod.com. We're interviewing the best comedians, so tune in quick and get your ears receiving them. We talking about life and life to stream right to you, from the microphone right to your home, dude. Side note, this might get embarrassing, but no, don't sweat, yo, cause there it is.
Welcome to the There It Is podcast, a comedy podcast to help you find your inspiration. I'm your host, Jason Farr. Let's do this. Thanks so much for joining us. Great episode today with Brian James O'Connell. He's back for a third time. I love having him on. First, just want to mention we have a couple of new posts on our YouTube channel, so go check those out, youtube.com/thereitis. We have an enhanced version of recent episodes on there, including a bonus episode. I love the enhanced versions that brother of the show, Trey, is putting together. He's finding some fun stuff in there, and a lot of it is showing what we are referencing. Like if we're talking about something and you're like, I didn't see that. I don't know what they're really talking about, or I didn't read that article. He puts that stuff in the YouTube episode. So go check those out. That's for the newer episodes, not for the old ones. So if we share like episode 58, it's not going to be like that. But this episode next week, probably going to have some enhancements. Speaking of this episode, we've got Brian James O'Connell, as I mentioned, and I love having him on. Really appreciate him as an improviser and as a person. We have a really interesting discussion. You may not agree with everything we say, and I'm interested to hear that. So share your thoughts or your arguments with us on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram at There It Is Pod. All right, well, let's just get right to it. Here's my chat with Brian James O'Connell. You listened to the recent episode with Alrinthea Carter. You messaged me and you quoted something saying, from the perspective of perfection, or we can look at it as this feeling thing where you have power and control. You were like, buddy, I know I've been on a few times already, but whenever you have some time to drop, like, please let me know if you need a last minute replacement. I have thoughts. So I want to know what these thoughts are.
I popped pretty good for that line of yours, and then I immediately did something that I very rarely do, which is just reach out directly to a person and say, hey, I'm doing this.
and let me tell you, you're one of the main people that I would just love to continuously have back on this podcast, if not the main one, honestly.
That is very, very kind of you to say. That is very kind. Yeah, just that line of, instead of us approaching improv, approaching this art form through the sense of for the perspective of perfection, of like it's something that we have to perfect and then own, and therefore can say that we have, like, it's an achievement unlocked in a video game. Like, this is a goal that I have clearly accomplished, and now that is set and done over in stone. Like, it's not winning the Heisman Trophy that year,
right?
You know what I mean? But then you followed it up with the idea. You're like, or instead of approaching it from the perspective of perfection, maybe approach it from the idea of power and control. And obviously, there's some questions of like what control means and all that kind of stuff. And there's some hard stuff that we've been going through with improv the last 10, 15, 20 years when it comes to those things. But just having control of your own power and sort of expressing it that way. And I was just like, it sucked because I was in the shower, so I couldn't really at that section of it. Like I do a lot of multitasking. It was the shower at that point, and I couldn't really jump up and down the way I wanted to, because I was like, I'm gonna break my goddamn neck. But there was a fist bump there. Before we get into any of my thoughts, can you just elaborate on that for me? Because it was dope, and I just want to make sure I'm understanding it well. And also, I just want to hear more of it again.
I don't know if I'll get any fist bumps trying to elaborate on it. I just think that, I'll put it in terms of this, as far as perfection. If somebody wants to learn a musical instrument, you can sort of perfect that skill over time because it has to do with like being a technician, using your fingers on this instrument in a very specific way to get this specific outcome. But
That's
improv
true.
isn't
Yes.
like that.
No.
Improv does not the the skill is talking and using your body. So yeah, I
Mhm.
can get better at expressing emotion a certain way, but
Right.
improv inherently is about us interacting with each other.
Yeah. Yeah.
Improv is not this singular thing of me just being really good at accents
Mhm.
or really good at it. Improv is when we interact with each other and
Right.
explore. So there is no way to perfect that. It's not the same kind of skill. So looking at it from this perfection standpoint is automatically just barking up the wrongest tree. And then as
Right.
far as power and control, I think you get we can be empowered by
Yes.
recognizing that we can relinquish the perfection struggle and we actually have control over relinquishing that and giving ourselves that power. We don't need somebody else to tell us to do it. We don't need someone else to show us how to do it. It's just something that needs to happen in our mind where we go,
Mm.
I have the control here to care about perfection or not care about it. And when you decide to not care about it, you have empowered yourself so much.
Yes. Ah. Mm. Yum, yum, yum. Inject it into my veins. Put it. Put it into a soup and let it simmer for days. And just every time you pass by the kitchen, just take another little bowl and sip on it. Ah, that's perfect, man.
I
Thank you.
appreciate you saying that.
Thank you for putting that in so many words that I could not. Like I relate a lot to the musician because I'm also a guitar player. I was a working musician for 8 years in North Carolina. Uh, I usually like my usually go to is like, oh, what was that all like? I'm like, well, it's good. Like, I sang lead. I played rhythm guitar. I probably wrote 85% of the material in any band I'm in, and I definitely open for bands you have heard of. So that is usually that's the bubble that I give people in. Because then the next thing you know is like, well, I don't want to fucking name drop. That's gross.
Right.
That's gauche.
Mhm.
But that idea of yes, you can practice an instrument to the point where you have a objective mastery of the dexterity that you need to be able to produce what's in your head through your fingers and to where another person
Mhm.
can interpret it through their ears and through their heart for
Yeah.
sure.
Mhm.
But there are certain phrases, especially when it comes to improv, that at the end of the day, mastery of your instrument only means so much if it is only for the purpose of saying, look how good I am at doing this one thing. Like I focus more on songwriting than I did like running scales and doing
Mhm.
sweep arpeggios and all those kind of things for a couple of reasons. One, very early on, I was lucky enough to read an interview with Muzz Skillings, who was the original bass player for Living Color, and he was talking about a conversation he was having with his brother, who's also a musician. And I think Muzz was listening to like he's either listening to Bad Brains or Black Flag or one of those, and his brother was kind of like scoffing. He was like, I could play that. He was like, yeah, but could you write it? Could you write it? Like, could you
Right.
write? Yeah, you could. Yeah, anyone could probably play Blitzkrieg Pop,
Mhm.
Blitzkrieg Bop, or Rise Above or anything like that. But that's not the point. Could you create
Exactly.
it? Could you envision it? And then
I've said
also,
that
I
so
think
many
it's
times when people will
yeah,
say now, like, "Oh, guitarists are better now because they know how to do all that stuff." But it's like, but can you capture people with what you create the way Jimi Hendrix did? You cannot
yeah,
say people are as good as Jimi Hendrix because they learned to play Jimi Hendrix. They had to learn to play Jimi Hendrix to
right.
get there. Jimi Hendrix is
Yeah, I
just
mean,
Jimi Hendrix, right?
it's similar. Like, yeah, there's on the one hand you have Hendrix, who's like being able to have the vision, the creative vision to put all
Mhm.
that sort of together on that. And yes, you can make the argument that similar to the martial arts, it all builds on each other, and there are
Right.
things, yes, that now people can do they could maybe do in 1960, 1940,
Right.
1840, but it all comes back to the same thing, which is to be a blues master is the same thing as being a martial arts master, because it's just about that one punch, right? Like my ex-brother-in-law used to be he probably still is, he was a manager for blues and roots music acts, so I've been lucky enough to go and see a lot of great people up front, and I've seen Buddy Guy and
Oh, I got a feeling it's gonna be my time after a while.
Sun Seals and
Call my job. Tell the boss I won't be in.
but it's always BB King.
Trail is gone. Trail is gone away.
And BB King does the same thing. It'd be a bunch of guys underneath, and then whoever like the new hot guys would, BB King would headline. At the end, he'd have them all come, and without fail, whether it's your, whatever blue-eyed, blonde-haired, white blues guitar player who's just bad as hell, and play, and he would get up there and he's trying to do everything he can to impress BB King to him. Like I'm good at this, and BB King's like professional wrestling. He's putting him over. He's just sitting on his chair going. He'll like look at the audience and point at him like, "Ooh, he's bad.
Yeah,
I respect this guy. You should respect." Yeah. He's putting him, and then when they're done, like playing behind their back and with their teeth and all that, BB King goes, "Oh yeah, my turn. Okay," and destroys them with one note. And it's the same thing with like martial arts masters. Boom. But so yeah, and just to finish my thought, like if your goal is to just learn mastery of an instrument, it also doesn't help you not only with the creativity part of it, but also the relatability, the chemistry. More good bands have not made music that we have ever heard than good bands we have heard, simply because the bands fell apart ahead of time. Yngwie Malmsteen is arguably one of the greatest and most important guitar players of all time. He invented the the scalloped scooped fretboard, so that it wasn't actually, he was playing in midair. He was one of the very first, if not the most important and probably creative visionary when it comes to the European style of metal guitar playing, where it's very classical based and melody based versus, blues based like it is in America, or how it was in England and Europe during the first wave of the British invasion, where they were all listening to old roots records and blues records and reinterpreting it. But Yngwie Malmsteen, and probably even admittedly so if you asked him today, was one of the worst sons of bitches to ever be around. He was just absolutely insufferable. Every band fell apart because of him. He drank too much. He got fat. He was unconscionable. So it's like,
I heard
great. So he did all that. Yeah, he did all that stuff, but we're not talking about him the way that we talk about Hendrix or BB King or anybody else. So you have to, don't be a jerk.
There's a balance. Yeah, don't be a jerk.
Yeah.
There's a balance. Like I've heard, there's someone, one of my best friends is a guitarist, and he was telling me a story about how it was like I don't think it was at Crossroads Festival, but it was at a festival where there were a bunch of different guitarists around, and everyone was jamming. And it's understood that you go, I think it was 16 bars, my friend said, when you're jamming.
Usually 8, 16 bars, something like that. Depends on how many. Yeah.
Well, he just kept playing, just was blowing past it and going on and just hogging. And I think this was just like a jam session. I don't even think this was on stage.
Sure.
It could have been. But he was just doing that, and everyone was getting annoyed, so the band started screwing with him. And after every so measures, they would go up an octave. And he, because he was so in his head, wasn't recognizing what they were doing. And so he would just be playing off key. And then he would be like, oh, what? And then he would change. And then they would go up again. And he would be like, what? And he got so mad. But it's like, don't be a jerk. Don't be a hog. Like
modulating up a key one step at a time, like the end of some pop songs where it's like, here's the chorus, now here's the chorus, like modulated up a key, like the dream police, and then him being but what a great lesson to learn,
Yeah,
good on him.
Yeah,
awesome. So I have a go finish your thought, and then I have a question.
Oh, I was just gonna say the only time I ever hear about Yngwie is when I keep seeing this one guy wearing an Yngwie Who shirt, and it's not like disparaging him. I think it's supposed to be like Ingve Malmsteen. That's who. It's supposed to be something like that, but that's few
Gotcha.
and far between. Like
Yeah.
everyone's on John Mayer right now. Like all the guitarists on YouTube and
Exactly.
Instagram, they're not talking about Ingve.
Yeah, and also too, like in improv, we're all standing on the shoulders of giants. So
Yeah.
like, if you're big into Eddie Van Halen, Eddie Van Halen will be like, look, anyone that knows that like Eric Clapton's my guy, but I also play like Jimmy Page, and Jimmy Page on record is great, but Jimmy Page live is like listening to a 4-year-old with a broken wrist. And then you go to listen to Jimmy Page and Clapton, and Clapton will be like, look, anyone who knows is I'm just ripping off Albert King and Buddy Guy. And then you go and talk to Buddy Guy, and Buddy Guy was like, I was great, coming up on like Howlin' Wolf and all those, and
meet me in a bottom bay, bring me my running shoes.
and Hubert Sumlin.
Just come on in my house. Hey, I won't fight.
And you just keep going back, and it all goes back to Robert Johnson. And
And the day keeps on burning me. The hellhound on my trail.
it's the same thing with Ingve. Like Ingve Malmsteen can talk all the trash he wants, but somewhere Richie Blackmore it's going to be like, excuse me,
I'd like a word.
excuse me, excuse me. I gave up guitar for an entire 2 years to learn how to play cello. I think I might have something to say. I wrote Smoke on the Water. I might have something to say here. So yeah, I had a question, because the part that I really popped for and I like is the idea of like taking back control and power and learning that being able to express yourself in those things. And I mean, you just said anyone who's listening to this can just rewind it and listen to all the great stuff. I'm not going to say any better. I'm curious though, because I think of, as you know, I think about this stuff all the time.
Yeah, that's why I love you.
And thank you. Right back at you. So I am curious to know what you think is the solution moving forward. I get asked a lot about BOC. What do you think it's going to be like when we, quote unquote, go back to normal or go back to live performance, or however they put it to me, whatever version of that is. And on the one hand, my girlfriend Elizabeth, she says hello, by the way.
Oh, hello, Elizabeth.
Yeah. I think she put it best in the shorthand. When I'm trying to be positive, I'll use the shorthand that she uses when people ask me that question. I say, well, it's good. We're definitely not going away. Improv will be here when we get back. It'll just be smaller and different. And so that's okay. It's okay for things to be smaller and different. That's those are hors d'oeuvres. Those are appetizers. There's a whole cuisine based around tiny plates. But I have some other theories, but I want to know, like, what's yours? Because I get to ask so much, but I don't get to ask other people. We have seen, I will say that I am happy. It appears, and I am sort of glad that if it seems to trend that way, that the era of massive improv institutional training center is over, because the three big ones are in either not existing or in bad shape, or fundamentally every day a new article comes out about how they are fundamentally going to be different from ever, which I think is a positive thing. But my basic question, we could talk about that later too. My basic question, because I don't get to ask it for anybody else, and I really respect your opinion a lot.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, you got it. What do you think it's going to be like when we, quote unquote, come back?
I think the optimist in me is definitely saying, like, oh, things can be better. It can be smaller, the way it needs to be. Can maybe be like the scrappy thing maybe UCB was in the early 2000s, where it was it's just about the excitement and not about the industry. I think, though, that there are so many people who've been displaced in New York that they're going to look
Yeah.
for something and they're going to recreate
Yeah.
something, and that it's going to have the same problematic attitudes of cutthroat nature to get ahead
Yeah.
because it's all about getting on SNL or getting your own TV show or whatever it is. And
Yeah.
and I
So
that's gonna find
it's a large market. It's a large market problem, to be sure. A major
Yeah.
market problem, to be sure. Keep going.
yeah, and so I think that's gonna rear its ugly head, in some way, and that's I hate to say that because the optimist in me
Yeah.
wants to believe that we can just get this right as far as how we treat people. I think in
For
large
sure, and
part
some-
things are going to be better, though.
Yeah, some of that better is already happening. Our girl Corinne Wells is part of the that new Squirrel Theater in New York, and and congrats and kudos and hat tip to her to go and she just got hired to work with Amber. So it's like two tastes that go great together. I couldn't be happier about that.
Oh yeah.
I was like, Ruffin, you got a good one there. Well done. Right?
Yeah.
So I think there are stuff like that and like Bird City that Tavish Forsyth is putting together down in Baltimore, and then Nick and Josh are really putting their money where their mouth is when it comes to being inclusive and opening up things like casting and trying to be aware and being proactive, asking ahead of time. I mean, those guys are my friends, but also part of the reason they're my friends is because I love and respect them as human beings so much because they do stuff like that. Like being proactive and asking ahead of time, hey, we're putting together a sketch project. We want to make sure that our casting is being as equitable as possible. Does anybody have any advice for us? Does anybody have anything like taking those steps before versus having what I have found in the past to be a lot of retroactive, like, oh, we fucked up. Now we're doing this thing.
Yeah.
And then it gets that sense of like, are you really doing it? Or is this just performative?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
Or it's like, all right, we'll change everything, but I'm just doing it this way because everybody said this, but I haven't actually learned the lesson. Yeah, I think I think we've seen that in a few theaters, and now there's this new sad thing that's come out of Second City.
Oh no!
Did you hear about the late night staff, the people who keep that place making money? Are not going to be able to be rehired. The bartender is working there for 40 years, and he's
40 years.
I can't believe that. That like. I mean, I say I can't believe it. I say I can't believe it because I think it's monumentally shitty. But we all know how these big companies operate, so I'm not surprised. But it's still monumentally shitty.
Yeah, as you know, I like to keep my finger on the pulse of these sort of things. So like they definitely come across the old desk of BOC pretty often and frequently. And the first, when I first heard that it was a venture capitalist company buying it, I was like, ugh.
Yeah.
All right, but that's part of the nature of capitalism. Who else is going to buy it? Who else can afford to buy an institution like that except for VC? And then you hear whispers of stuff that I'm not really at liberty to talk about because I don't want to talk out of school. Same. But I was like, oh, that's a nice step to hear that they're doing that. That seems like legitimate. And then that was like a week ago. Then yesterday, it's, hey, we've turned over our. If you've turned over, it's one thing for a VC company to say, look, we don't know shit about running a restaurant. And I've worked in many restaurants with many GMs and many owners who came from a different background and then started running a restaurant because that was their dream, and they should have not been. So on the one hand, I do appreciate the honesty and the openness of being like, look, we're going to hire this company that knows how to run restaurants. But on the flip side of that, when you hired them, you absolutely had the power to say, depending upon us hiring you, that means you have to agree to bring all the people back.
Right.
You're like, they could have done that and it wouldn't have cost them anything.
Right.
And so, when I first saw that Chicago Tribune, I immediately retweeted it with the caption of like, most of the people that lost their jobs there are people that work there because they cared about the productions on stage and they felt a respect and an honor to the history of the institution itself. And then whatever that quote was, and then just underneath it, I was like, boy, does that sound familiar? Because I did it. I did the same thing for Sharna, like an asshole, like a moron that I did that. So I'm hoping to come back around to what we were talking about. Like I'm hoping that let those big institutions die off, let them go this way, and let them be the McDonald's of comedy or whatever. And then we can go back to these smaller, more bespoke, like you were saying, it was like, it'll be smaller. And like, how do we do that then? How do we do the small thing without running into those same, like you were saying, without running into those same things of like, well, now it's all theater politics and backstabbing because everyone's trying to get on stage because you're trying to get
or
seen
they're going to
by
make the
industry or
same
blah, blah, blah.
mistakes that Sharna or anyone at Second City made, you know? Like, that's the thing. It's like, I think it's I won't say double-edged sword.
The easy mistake to not make, the easy mistake to not do Sharna's mistake is don't be a sociopath. Don't be completely devoid of any empathy whatsoever. And then just, if you want a good rule of thumb, and that's the nice thing about not working at a theater anymore, is that I don't represent anyone but myself. Just read any Donald Trump tweet in Sharna's voice and vice versa. Same human being. It's the same human being. Yeah. She, even when she announced that she was closing, she could not get through the first paragraph without saying how important she was and how the history was. And then she thinks she invented comedy. So, just ask her. You know what I mean?
I'm super sad that theater closed because of hearing like Dave Pasquesi say, that's been my home for decades, you know? That's where my heart breaks for it, where it's like, well, does it have to close? Same. And that's where I wish it was just sold off to someone who will honor the name and honor the people who are performing there, and keep that part. But
who can afford it?
Exactly. Who could afford it that would care to do it the right way? You know what I mean?
And the people, and honestly, the people that have the money to do it, who have a history at this place, are doing different things that they're like. It is easy for us to fantasy book like we're, I'm big into pro wrestling. It's easy to fantasy book. Oh, like what if Tina Fey bought IO? And then I'm like, does she want to?
Right.
Isn't she making television shows?
Right.
Regardless of how you feel. Yeah.
Like when Lauren leaves, Tina Fey could do it. Conan O'Brien could do it. Yeah, but they're kind of busy. They're doing something. I mean, regardless, else, they may not want to.
Yeah, regardless of how you feel about them personally, and I know there's problematic stuff about everybody that you can bring up at any certain point.
Yeah.
But like, it's just, you don't get to make that decision for them and then be disappointed when they don't do the thing that you invented in your brain.
Right. Right. It's not that easy. And also, like, people are fallible and they will make some mistakes on some, in some regard.
Some of them will go so far as to say, like, why would I ever make that mistake? I already know how thankless it is to run a comedy theater. You want me to put my successful career on hold, invest millions of dollars of my own money to be raked across the coals every day that I'm not doing it right. I'm going to pass. I'll tell you, once we stop recording, there was a very famous person that I am connected to through improv, and who was a huge improv person, but a person you have definitely heard of. Everyone listening to this has definitely heard of. And we asked him if they would be interested in, and they cut us off before we even finished the fucking question. Not on your life. Not a shot in hell.
Wow.
Thank you. I'm very flattered, but never. Just like, yeah. So I'll tell you when we're off air, because I don't want to, out it. I don't want to out anybody. But I was just like,
there's a lot of inside baseball.
And that was 10 years ago. That was 10 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's like, part of the reason where I'm not sure. I won't get into inside baseball with this either, but there's so much with UCB where it's like, I don't know, maybe they won't come back, because if they did, they're going to be under a microscope. They have to know they would be under a microscope, and
they've been under a microscope and have not been good. Have not been good while they've been currently on the mic. They tried to bring back company script. You know what I mean? That's crazy.
I don't know.
A year or two ago, it was revealed that that CFO, that fucking nightmare person who I've never met and never want to, they were so overwhelmed and kind of out of sorts of like how they were going to like have people who were doing work study, interning to pay for classes, like almost everyone had done. They were going to start giving them all official UCB credit cards that would they would swipe, and that would put their money on there, and they would use that to pay for class. When you offer something that is only legal tender that can be used in your store, that is something called script, SCRIP, company script. It's from an old 1800s, early 1900s, where company town would come in and say, we're going to build a town to do all this lumber here in this big forest, and we're going to hire a bunch of people to work here, and you're going to live in this town that we built, and you're going to work for us, this company, and we're going to pay you, not in money, but we're going to pay you in these paper or these coins that we created. And you can only spend that money in the company stores that we built. So if you want to get stuff like eggs or flour or milk or medicine, that's illegal. That's literally illegal in this country, and has been for almost 100 years. And they were trying to bring it back. And I was like, dude, you've already been under the microscope for a year. And one of your solutions was to bring back fucking company script?
Wow.
How are you this bad? And you're the chief financial officer. It'd be one thing if you were just the tech guy. But
Who just had an idea and didn't know the history. But
money is in your goddamn title. Money.
Oh, wow.
So yeah. So and honestly, I don't, how, like you said, how can they come back? They're going to be under the microscope. But they can't
possibly want to. And then also,
they can't afford it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just just the loans that they would have to pay back, because so much of it didn't go to paying their employees, which means it's not forgivable. They have to pay it back at a 1% interest. And honestly, like, you know, I know some of them, and I'm tight with some of them, and some of them I don't know. But like any of those people that are in charge at UCB, like, I have to imagine a small part of them is just going, thank God, dodged a bullet. Let's just cash out. All we wanted to do was teach classes to make money to pay our rent while we were trying to get on SNL. And then we blinked, and it was 20 years later, and we're 25 years later, and we were like, we're not built for this. We're not equipped.
Right.
We didn't go to business school.
Well, it blew up in such.
I've got a drama degree.
That's what I keep saying to people about these improv theaters. Like, they're all started by improvisers, not business majors. They're not people who necessarily know any of that stuff. So of course they're going to make mistakes, business mistakes, but then also it's such a risky business. It's hard to get a person with a strong business mind in there. And then that person is probably going to make a bunch of capitalist decisions that don't really support the art, which is maybe what we're seeing with Second City. I don't know. But like,
I mean, I have the same thing about SAG, which is does not make me popular to my SAG actor friends, where I'm just like, I would kill for 1 year for the SAG president to not be an actor. Have a board of actors who understand what the business is like and all that, and then interview a bunch of people, but put that person in charge. Let me put it this way. Chris Paul is substantially the president of you know.
It's like the players.
Paul's the president of. He's the president of the. I want to make sure I'm getting the titles correct. Chris Paul is the president of the NBA Players Association, the union, right? He is a player. He is a current player. He is a current superstar player. He is a first ballot up and down Hall of Fame player if he stopped playing today, right? Respect of his peers. A lot of the guys that are on that board are all very, very smart and know the sport backwards and forwards, and are all current players. Michelle Roberts is the executive director. She is someone who was a lawyer in DC that was, go to her resume and pack a lunch, right? Apologies to Drew Droege. That's his line. Go to IMDb and pack a lunch, right? But like her very first press conference, they're like, how do you feel about, you're going to be negotiating with, all these billionaires, some of the richest men in the world who own the governors of these teams, these 30 owners of the NBA teams, and without missing a beat at her opening press conference after getting hired to the job, she goes, the graveyards are filled with the bones of the men who slept on me. I'm like, give me that person.
Wow.
Who is looking right. Give me that person who's looking out for my interests and trying to grow and build this theater while I am focusing on making the art and creative decisions. I can disagree with them. They can come to me like, look, you can make a bunch more money if you did it this way versus the way that you want to do it. I'm like, you know what? It's important to me that we do it this way. And they go, hey, it's your company. I'm just telling you. And that's it.
Right.
But like, give me that. I would
Yeah.
kill for Michelle Roberts to be the head of SAG for 1 year.
Yeah.
For 1 year. Holy shit.
There's
Popcorn.
gotta be there's gotta
Every
be
day.
somebody. I mean, my level 3 at the Magnet had somebody who's like a CNBC contributor, and she's worth millions of dollars because she's got a hedge funds or investment firm or something like that she runs.
I love hearing stuff like that, by the way, too. That's like my favorite thing.
It's so random about being in a big city doing improv.
Yeah.
Because when you're taking improv classes, anybody could be in those classes.
Dude, one of my two favorite stories of all time when it comes to improv class, and I've got some. Like I taught improv to Tay Zonday, Chocolate Rain.
Chocolate rain, a baby born will die before the sin.
He's a nice kid, right? He
seems like
sweet.
a nice kid, yeah.
And I was just covering the class for Marion Oberly. So when I got into the class and then got out, and we were emailing back and forth like, hey, this is what we worked on. This is the notes I gave and all that. I was like, hey, thanks for not telling me you had a goddamn internet star. She's like, what are you talking about? I was like, oh, do you not know? I got to send her the YouTube link to Chocolate Rain. She had no idea. She was like, 900 billion. Like, yeah, views. She had no idea. But my two favorites are, number one, my friend who took a UCB class with Jerry O'Connell, and they're doing a rehearsal warm-ups at their home before their grad show. And Jerry's like, hey, is it okay if my wife comes in and just sits on the couch? Because she's in the car right now and I don't want her to sit for an hour. They're like, sure. You mean Rebecca Romaine, like at the time, Rebecca Romaine, right? And so she's sitting on the couch, and they're just doing a Herald in front of her as a warm-up before they go do their grad show at like 3:00 in the afternoon on a Friday. And she's like, oh my God, you guys are so funny. It's like, Mystique thinks we're where are we? There's that one. And then my favorite of all time is my homegirl, Lauren Miller, Lauren Meunier now. She was in class with the Miz, Mike Mizrin from WWE.
Yeah.
He's super nice guy. I met him there. I met Morrison there, who's also a super nice guy. And it's my favorite story of all time. They're having their last class before their last grad show on Sunday. And so like the class is Tuesday night and the grad show is on Sunday. And at the end of class, he was like, hey guys, I just want to say I'm really sorry. I'm not going to be able to make it to our last grad show this Sunday. I'm really bummed about it. I've been having a lot of fun. You guys are so much fun. I just want you guys to know if it was any other Sunday, I would definitely be there and have a lot of fun. And then someone was like, oh, why can't you make it? He goes, WrestleMania. He goes, because of WrestleMania. And this 19-year-old kid, Lauren Miller, knew who he was, but like didn't blow up his spot, like just treated him like Mike, quote unquote Michael from class. And this 19-year-old kid who clearly had no idea who he was just like, oh, are you going? and to his credit, sweet boy from Parma, Ohio, right outside of Cleveland, right? He could have blown up that kid's spot. He could have been a jerk to him, but it's my favorite of all time. He just goes, no, I'm in it. That was the WrestleMania where he wrestled John Cena.
Oh wow!
And with the help and with the interference of Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, The Miz won the WWE Championship instead of being at his last level 6 grad show.
Yeah,
that's the tops. That's the tops.
They say when you get famous, you become an asshole a little bit, like for a little bit at least. But if you can, at that moment in his career, not seize the opportunity to shit on this guy and go like, do you know who I am or anything like that, says a lot about his
shitting
character.
Me? Like, right. None of that. It reveals character.
It really says a lot about his character that he's not, that he wouldn't do that in that moment and would, because and he maybe it's a type of personality that it was more humbling, where it was like, okay, not everybody knows who you are, just that's cool, just like accept that. Cool.
I relax, but I'm main eventing WrestleMania with John Cena and The Rock. There had to be a little bit of that when he was driving home, just going like, but surely he knows who The Rock is. Like, what? You know, like, I could have, should I have said more in class? I feel like you and I can just keep getting off topic and telling fun stories here.
But
So
that
I'll
is
just
still
throw this.
related in that it's about, power and
Yeah.
control that you have in an area.
Oh, what a great callback. Look at you. What a fantastic.
I learned from the best.
Oh, I'm only as good as the people I share the stage with, brother. So here's my theory that I throw out a lot, and sometimes I get pushed back on it, sometimes I don't. Which is easy now because there's no live theater to be had. So there's no it's easy for this to talk about in theory and instead of practice. So a lot of times I get asked, like, what's it going to be like when we come back on that? And a lot of my stuff is I put it in the caveat of if I was starting now. Like I've been heavily involved, if not starting, running 2 major, important, I would say, comedy theaters. I think I've done my part for King and Country. I'll never say never, but to get me to be that deeply involved in the third one, it better be a sweet deal, right? But when people ask me that, like what I would do starting today, how would I do it? My first things are completely divorce your training center from your stage time, which includes abolishing all house teams. No house teams, period. And the second thing is I would say I would have the business have some sort of income, main income that supported keeping the lights on. So therefore, I did not need to rely on my shows or my training center to pay the bills, because I feel like that's so often where those 2 places where people go wrong. I always use the example of, it's not there anymore, but it was one of my favorite places. It was in Cincinnati on their main street, which is kind of their musicians row. It was a place called Sudsy Malone's. It was a bar and a laundromat that you could also see live music. So, right? Yeah. So you bring your laundry, you get quarters from the bar, you put your water, you put a load in, you get a beer, you turn around, you watch a G Love and Special Sauce, right?
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter how loud the washing machines are because the band is louder. Exactly. And that way you're making your nut from the bar sales and from the laundromat. So then you can book whatever goddamn bands you want, whatever music. No one has to say, you don't owe anyone anything. I think that's so much where we fall into trouble, is that people think the only reason I'll take these, I'll pay for these classes because the classes are required for me to perform on this stage where I've seen so much stuff that I like and I want to be those people. I saw Armando. I want to be in Armando. So to play in Armando, I have to take classes here. And then we've sort of internalized this path, right? Maybe obliquely or not, consciously or unconsciously or subconsciously, we've told our students, if you like what you saw here, pay for these classes, then you will have earned stage time, and then there'll be a whole audition process for this house team. And if you make a house team, and maybe you get to be on the best house team, and if you're on the best house team, then maybe we'll get kicked up to this Saturday or Friday night premiere show, whether it's that's one where all the celebrities do. And then maybe if you're around long enough, then maybe you can start coaching here and start teaching here, or maybe get hired to work here. And then when that doesn't happen, that sense of validation doesn't happen, you get a lot of bitterness. And then you also get the other side of that double-edged sword. You get a lot of entitlement. We had someone look my mentor in the face and say, I don't know why I would sign up for your classes if you're not going to guarantee me a spot in one of your house teams. Yeah. What can you, I wish this was a video so everyone could see the face you made. What do you do with that? What do you do that? So it's like, hey, this is a training center. If you like what you saw here, we teach classes in the back. Otherwise, please tip your bartenders. If you take classes here, it is to learn this specific skill set, and then you do with it what you want. We do not have house team, because people are like, well, don't you owe them a place to like work on those skills and stage time and reps? I'm like, they can get that anywhere they damn well please. Like that's so. One of my, I'll say this one last thing, and then I really, really want to know how you feel about that. I hope one of the other things that dies is this sort of like 4 improv teams that either are house teams that got broken up, but they still really like each other, so they all want to play together, or practice teams, which is a big thing in New York and LA, practice teams. literally practicing until UCB Herald auditions come around. That crazy concept. 4 of them rent out a black box theater, put a cooler in the corner with some beers and some water and a bucket for donations, and then 1/4 of the audience gets up at a time and performs for the other 3/4, the other 3 teams, and then a smattering of significant others, friends from out of town, or family members, which means you only really have anywhere from 6 to 8 original audience members. That is unsustainable. I do not understand why people just don't find the team member who has the biggest house, move all the furniture out of the living room, and throw a goddamn house party and do the same thing. Take that $150 to $250 you were going to spend on rent at this black box theater and just do it at your house. That so when people are like, what about the reps? I'm like, get the reps. Does Tiffany have a pool? Great. Throw a pool party on a Sunday and have an improv show while you're doing it. It's like that kind of stuff. So I'm sorry. I know I've thrown a bunch of stuff at you, but like, to me, it just doesn't seem. It just doesn't seem. Yeah, it just doesn't seem sustainable up at this point. Please.
Oh, look, it's something I'm still struggling with because I'm on a house team at the Magnet, and I love the Magnet, and I love the culture at the Magnet.
So do I. I've known David Wharf for like, I don't know, 10,000 years, something like that. You know?
And I love the community, and that's the thing that everyone always likes about the Magnet. Whenever I talk to somebody who is in the community or a student, or someone who wants to study and has done at Magnet and has done maybe a couple of jams, and I say, and they'll come to like the Wednesday night mixer a bunch, or they'll do like the free class, the free intro class. And I'll say, like, why do you want to, and I'll say, why do you want to study here? And they all talk about the community. And so I think that's what resonates most with me about what you're saying is that the important thing really is the community. And also, like, the art form.
Yes.
Spreading that art form, enjoying that art form in an honest way where it's not tied to stuff that's really like either problematic or it's just toxic or it's just not joy giving.
It's pay to play. They went through this in the music industry with payola back in the 50s and 60s, and then pay to play in the Los Angeles metal scene in the early 80s. You buy you buy 1,500 tickets from the club, and then you go out and sell those tickets, and you'll make your money back if you sell them all. So it's not even like, but you have to pay to play. Yeah, I'm against that. I'm against that for sure.
Right, and that's something where I'm also like, the things that are rubbing you the wrong way and that you're against here, I agree with. So I can't I can't disagree, but I do like being on a house team. So I don't really know. I part of me, when I've heard you say this before, I've been like, is there a way to do house teams in a way that's healthy? And I think there is maybe a way that a theater can put it out the right way. But what it's not going to avoid, and I don't know what it is. I'm just saying maybe that's possible. I mean, I think one thing that I really appreciated, because there is a part of me that believes in study and then having a conservatory, and they were very generous with the amount of shows that you get with the classes at Magnet. But one thing that I really appreciated was in the last conservatory class, Peter McNerney was saying us like, I'm going to paraphrase. He put it so well, but I'm going to paraphrase. He was basically like, okay, this thing that you've been doing is special. That's the thing that matters. And you're going to be you're going to go audition. You're going to get a call back. You're not going to get a call back, and you're going to disagree with it. And that's fine.
I like that.
But you're gonna like this stuff that we are doing and that we have been doing in the conservatory. It's not for that. It's not so that you can, it's not connected. Like I get the impression that he would probably agree with you that there should be it should be divorced, like the training. And I don't want to put words in Peter's mouth, but I'm just saying, like,
please.
the vibe that I got from him was very much like, okay, yeah, one does lead to the other, but you shouldn't care so much about the audition that's going to take place. In
Yeah, and
this,
it's hard to tell someone that who has invested so much of
right.
themselves in it, especially like you and I when we found improv.
Mm-hmm.
We were like, this is the thing I want to do for the rest of my life. This thing saved my life. It gave me all of my friends. It gave me my purpose. It gave me my meaning.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and now not care as much?
Right.
Oh, I don't know how I can do that.
Right.
I think some of it comes from limiting, like, say what you want about Second City, but I did like the idea that at least they offered the idea of tracks.
Mm-hmm.
Are you here to just have fun? And your Tuesday night was either this or a cooking class at the Learning Annex, but they didn't offer it on Tuesday night. The Tuesday night you had free. Or are you here to try and be a professional performer, entertainer?
I like that
comedian.
idea. I didn't know they did that.
Yeah, they did have, like, at least in LA, I saw that because I was in the green room. I was sitting in with opening night, and I looked on the big poster that they had of all the different. I was like, what's this track thing? And they're like, oh, that's okay if you don't want to do performance stuff, if that's not what you're doing it for, like, you just don't go into that track. And I was like, oh my God, what a brilliant idea.
That probably would alleviate a
yeah.
lot of the entitlement, or maybe, well, not entitlement, but the...
No, it wouldn't.
You're right. That's why I changed mid thought. I think if you did have two different tracks or like a few different tracks like that, I think you would have people who would say, oh, great, I just want to do this for fun. And they wouldn't fall into the trap of, well, I have to, I'm taking classes. So the next thing is to get in the conservatory. And then the next thing is to get on a house team. And that shouldn't be how people think. But I don't know how to have house teams and divorce people from that thought, or have
there's still going to be tweeners
or anything, you know.
Yeah, there's still going to be tweeners. There's still going to be people who are like, well, I want to do shows and I want to play with the best people, but like I have a husband and 2 kids. Like I have my regular job and regular life.
True.
What do you mean I have to take this one track where I don't get to do any shows and I'm not playing with the best people? And I'm like, whoa, we didn't say they weren't the best people. We just said they weren't interested in making it a career. Those are your words. And you have all these things. I think part of what happens, on the one hand, like you say, like being very generous with performances for classes, for, I kind of go back and forth. It's a double-edged sword because on the one hand, having a single grad show that is a way for you to invite all of your friends and family to see this cool thing you've been doing that is giving you so much happiness that you've been talking about over drinks and brunch all for the last 6-8 weeks, right? Then there's an idea of having like multiple of those. And I'm like, well, it's a very thin line when those multiple grad shows just become an unadvertised burden for you, the student, to market and fill our theater with paying customers. Even if the ticket is free, we're going to want them to buy concessions because that's where our money is. And hopefully, maybe if we're really lucky, get a couple of them to sign up for the class and we start this MLM all fucking over again, right? I think partly what you can do is sort of find that strike that balance, or just say like, look, we're only going to do one grad show because this is what this theater believes in, or no, we're going to do 3. It's an 8-week class, or it's a 6-week class. So your last 3 weeks, you're going to have class shows. So you can do the show and then talk about it in class the next week. That's fair too. I can buy that. I think one of the ways you can start that with house teams is have one house team. There is because that's where it came from. The idea of a house band, the band that was the best, the band that knew every song on the radio, even if the song only came out that week, had a bunch of originals that were also really cool and good. They were energetic. They were charismatic. The lead singer had a great voice and was really good looking. But more importantly, they got to play in that big bar in town Fridays and Saturdays. This is me showing my music background. Fridays and Saturdays, because they were the best band in town. They brought the most people who wanted to party, have a good time, and dance. And the owner of the place said, yes, I'm going to charge a cover charge. That's your money. But my bar is going to be filled with people all night long, drinking and having a good time and making me money. Mutual symbiotic relationship. When IO Chicago closed, it had 30 fucking house teams. So what sense of quality can there be there? And then we do stuff like that at our theaters, because there's house teams, but then there's also like the premiere shows.
Mhm.
So it's like, yeah, I'm on Foster Kids, which is a house Herald team at IO West at 8 o'clock on Wednesday night. But I really want to play in Armando.
Mhm.
Armando's like, all right, then I would be really good in Armando. And then you have other people who are just like, we ran into this when we were doing at IO West. It was always we said it before every Herald audition. All right, before we let the first group in, we don't have to create any new teams. We're just watching and seeing what the talents are and all that. We said that to ourselves, and we lied probably only half of the time to ourselves. And then the one time I just had to raise my hand. I was like, I hate to be this guy, but I think this idea, because we had 3 stages. There was main stage Herald teams, and I don't know who, but then it came about like, well, we have all these students and we don't have enough space for them to do stage time, which was crazy because there was so much independent improv going on anyway. They could have played wherever the fuck they wanted to play. We should keep them here and make sure we've invested all this time in them, and we should keep them here and monitor them and make sure they're progressing. So we'll eventually have more main stage people. We're in Los Angeles. We're in the entertainment capital of the world. We're never going to be lacking for talent for our main stage. What are we talking about? So we'll create DCT teams and loft teams. We'll create a Major League Baseball, a AAA, and a AA. And I was like, I feel like we're going to create more problems than we solve making these other teams. No, this is good, because then people will feel like that. And I shit you not, almost immediately, I was getting calls from people, or people like, hey, BOC, before you go into the bar for a second, can I talk to you for a second? You know me. I'm like, yeah, always. I'm your teacher for life. I'm here. I would love to talk shop. And it's almost always like, look, I'm not saying I should be on like Trophy Wife tomorrow, right? 9 o'clock Wednesday night, Herald team, they're amazing. I'm not saying I should be on Trophy Wife, but I'm at least as good as a DCT team, man. I shouldn't be on a loft team. And then you started seeing these really weird narratives, or we would have to like justify, like almost like we are doing bad improv right now, because then I would hear from those same people like, well, I talked to the AD and he said, obviously I'm very talented and all that. And, they couldn't fit everybody. That like, the reason why I'm on a loft team is because I'm a lot better than a lot of the other people. And I'm sort of like a rock. I'm sort of like the anchor of that. And eventually when the next Herald auditions come around, like it's more than likely that I'm going to push up to a
putting themselves above other people, and all that same toxic sort of stuff still happens. Yeah.
Yes. I was like, what are we doing? Getting bigger cannot be the answer at this point.
Right.
When you have 1,000 people lined up around the block for a UCB Herald audition where there are only 9 slots available.
Or less. I've heard of times where it was like hundreds of people auditioned and there was 1 spot open. I think there is no
that can't be sustainable.
Yeah. I don't think there is a right way to have managed everything as big as they got. I just think there's no way to do it and keep everyone in check as far and keeping everyone happy when you have that many people. They had thousands of people who were going through classes a year, and tons of them good and should be able to perform on stage and in a highlighted sort of way because they're that good, but there's not enough room for it.
And then leaving the art. Yeah, and then leaving the art form feeling bitter and betrayed, which is just perfect for fucking improv, right?
So great, right? But I mean, even if like UCB had put a theater in every neighborhood or every like section of Manhattan and a couple of theaters in every borough or something like that, you still would have had someone who's like, yeah, I'm UCB Brooklyn, but I really want to be on the main stage.
Oh, you're right.
There's just no way. They could have gotten everyone placed on a house team, and they still would have just looked at the Sunday night Ass Cat team as the pinnacle.
You're right, because it's already happened. People if like they literally did it at Second City. If you studied at Second City LA instead of Second City Chicago, you weren't allowed to play in the alum show. If you graduated from IO Chicago, you could you could get into shows for free in LA,
Mhm.
but not vice versa.
Mhm.
But my girl Allison Reese was told flat out when she auditioned for Harold, she was like, "Why not get in?" It's like, "Well, you studied in LA first, and everyone there does it for industry, and that doesn't make you a very good team player." And the person who said that is one of the most least talented pieces of shit I've ever made in my fucking life. And I told her as much. I was like, "You do not listen to that man. That man is wrong." But it's
that's
ingrained
a shitty
in.
thing. That's a shitty thing to say, just because it's like you can't assume. Like there are a ton of great, like we're talking about how culture at UCB was problematic in a lot of ways, but that doesn't mean everybody there was a bad person. We're not saying
No.
that. So I wouldn't
No.
assume if they came from UCB, be like, well, you've got that UCB attitude of cooler than everybody. I don't know that about this person.
Yeah.
I just know that there
Well,
were
yeah,
people who did that over there, and it was a problem. And there are a lot of there are these problems everywhere.
Yeah, but I also heard that too from people who were like, "Yeah, I did the Second City Cleveland. When I moved to Chicago, they were like, oh, you did Second City Cleveland,
Oh, yeah.
Second City Detroit." So when you're saying like, yeah, even if they put like McDonald's, if they put a UCB in every city in town, be like, "Oh, you did UCB Kansas City? Well, we do it a little bit different." And you know what? That is almost always coming from a person who is projecting their own insecurities. That's never coming from, I don't know, pick a name.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like,
I had forgotten that Second City had done that method, because they had something in Raleigh, didn't they? Didn't Second City have
no, that was IO. They did. No, they had IO South. They did IO South at Comedy Works for a hot second. That whole, during that time, that whole area was toxic. It's better now. By the time, okay. So what's the answer then? I need you to help me. Like when we come back, how do we come back and how do we avoid this stuff? Well, I think it's for making things smaller.
I think smaller can help some of these things, but some of the issues are, some of the problems are self-inflicted. Like some things are like,
how do you mean?
Well, just like how that one, the people who had said like, "Oh, I just think I can be on the weekend team." Like that's, or even a better example is when you said, people were like, "Well, this track, they're not as good." It's like, no. I didn't say that the people who just are doing it for fun are not as good. You said that. I didn't say that.
You said that.
We're not saying that. That is not true. I think that's that's where it gets to be self-inflicted. That's where it's like, okay, you're bitter that you didn't get past auditions, because you feel entitled to get past auditions, and you're blaming the people who were there when you don't realize, you don't take into account just like there are not that many spots and it's competitive. It doesn't mean that you're not good, and it doesn't mean that they are wronging you, but people
I've been in hundreds of Herald auditions on both sides. It took me 6 times to make a house Herald team at iOS. Like I went through the whole process a bunch of times, and I was on the other side, being a coach and a teacher and being the bar manager, like, and wanting to help out on it. So I've seen hundreds of Herald auditions, easily thousands of people audition. Ton of them are great. Ton of them are funny. Ton of them are, I was like, "Oh, you're just not ready right now." Or like, "Oh, I've seen you perform before. You are better than this. You just tanked." But hey, sometimes people don't test well, whatever. 3 people. There have been 3 people in the history of, like, from the minute they opened their mouth, they said, "Well, we're taking her. We're taking them." That, like, to where the door shut and we went, "So we can all agree on such," and we're like, "Yes, of course." That was Peter Flouet, Betsy Sidaro, Lauren Lapkus. That's it. Those are the 3 people the first time they opened their mouths. And even then was like, I think Bets at that time you could only audition if you were in level 4 or above, or if you had a teacher, like, it's another fucking listen to the words I'm saying. You can only audition for a House Herald team if you're in level 4 or above. If you're below level 4, you need to have a written permission slip from your teacher. And so for Sidaro, she came in and crushed it. And one person, I won't say any names, but one person was like, I don't want to be that person, but I have to say it. She's in my level 2, and I didn't say that she could do this. She is crashing this audition. And another person says, "Well, I don't care. She's fucking funny. I'm taking her from my team. And that was it. That was the end of the discussion. Because we were like, yeah. So like she crashed the audition. Like, what are we talking about?
What are we talking about?
So in the great quantity of it all, of these improvisers, anecdotally, I can only talk about 3 people where I was like, oh, yes, 100%. We are all in lockstep. That is a, first ballot Hall of Famer. That person's going to a Main Stage Herald team today.
Yeah.
Right? So,
and like, honestly, someone asked a similar question of Lorne Michaels when it came to auditioning cast members. And he said there were 2 that he knew at the audition were like ready. And it was Dana Carvey and Kristen Wiig. Now,
yeah, that's right.
All of the massive superstars, comedy legends, and it's just those 2 that he's saying were ready.
You can see
audition.
it too. Have you watched Dana's? I've never seen Kristen Wiig's, but have you watched Dana's?
I don't think I have.
You can watch it on YouTube. At least once a year. Phil Hartman's my guy. That's my boy, right? Yeah. If you watch me play, you'll be like, oh, that guy's just ripping off Phil Hartman. Gladly own up to it. You can see like he's so
audition. I wanted to be the Phil Hartman.
Yeah, be the glue, baby. So you can see it's the same background and the same time period as Dana. So you can see it. I watch Phil's almost minimum once or twice a year.
What am I going to do? Just some characters and different things. I won't take a lot of your time.
And you can see he's over it. He knows he's on the wrong side of 30. He's not, no, whatever. He's like, oh, here's another one. And then he'll just like go into a pitch perfect Jack Nicholson. And then you're like, I don't know, whatever. Just put down the prop. You're just like, fucking wasting my time here. Attitude.
I could barely afford cigarettes, whiskey, and food. Looked like the food was going to have to go. Let me introduce my favorite impressionist, the funniest man in Germany, Günther Johann. Meine Favorite Jack Nicholson und Chinatown. Jack Nicholson.
Entschuldigen Sie, Frau Mulray. Bist du intercoursen mit du Vater?
Yeah. And then you watch Dana's, and Dana's just like so comfortable.
It's Dennis's favorite. Yeah, Carvey, great scooter. Yeah, do the Robin Leach thing, babe. That'll be real good. Yeah, okay.
So knows he has it in the bag before he's even done anything. He's like, I know, I like it. Hey, Lauren, should I play this song? Lauren likes this song. And he does Broccoli.
This is my impression of a very pretentious rock star. Everything you say is suddenly terribly important. Doesn't have to make any literal sense. You know, ladies and gentlemen, a long time ago, there were lots of people. That's all I wanted to say. And my lady, she went downtown. She bought some broccoli. She brought it home. She's chopping broccoli. Chopping broccoli.
Right? Chopping broccoli. He goes, I don't know. Another like, I feel like I've done all this stuff before, but Lauren likes it. Do you guys mind? You want me to do another one? Like he just has it. Of course he knew. Of course he knew. He's acting like it. You can see it.
Yeah.
Right?
It's bizarre. And I only bring that up to say that, like, you know, there's always going to be people who, like, there are a bunch of superstars who didn't get on SNL after auditioning, you know?
My name is Jim Carrey, and this is my Saturday Night Live audition.
I'm not sure how to pick strawberries. It's very simple, Norman. You just bend over and pick them.
So there's always going to be people who don't get there. And
Jordan Peele.
Kevin Hart. Lisa Kudrow. You know, like a ton of people.
It's a who's who.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's, I think that's where it depends on the mentality of the person, because there's some people who will audition and for a house team or whatever, and they will say, well, it's competitive, you know, I didn't get it, and that's okay. That's just part of this, right? And then you're going to have people who will be bitter and angry. And I don't know that there's a fix, a systemic fix for that, because there always going to be people
not for
like
introspection.
That.
Yeah,
Right.
not for introspection. There's no systemic. Like, I was disappointed sometimes, but I never thought like I got fucked over. And when I did my 6th one, the one where I finally made a team, and that was Foster Kids, in the moment, as I'm doing the scene with Candace, I was like, oh, I'm in. I can feel it. I am crushing this scene. Everyone in the room in this callback is dying laughing. I am having objectively, like I had the lights line. Like I had not only 2 of the edit lines where people were like swept at it because they're like not getting funnier than that. That's definitely the button of the scene. And then I had the last line of the show, and then the AD called lights. Like I knew I was in. There's no correlation there. But it is funny hearing things like seeing that, because like I reach, thank God we're not doing stand up is the most I like to say. I don't know how you do it, brother. I did it when I was a teenager. Good. Cause like I retweeted somebody today where it's just like, there's a lot of guys out there right now who think they're Bill Hicks and they're just really just a more pro rape Andy Rooney.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
There's a lot of problems in that world right now that thankfully are not as, well, knock on wood, but like I don't see nearly as much of the alt-right hanging around improv theaters as I do stand-up theaters.
I know. And I don't know who the like 25 or 30-year-old stand-up is. Well, I don't know. I'd have to look into it. I'm sure there's somebody that maybe I think is a little older. But I don't know who the 25-year-old stand-up is that's going to be the next John Mulaney or Dave Chappelle or something like that. Because I keep seeing people who I just don't think are as good. And they are real lazy. Yeah. And they say offensive things for the sake of saying offensive things. And it's working for them. I don't know. I don't know what's going on.
I don't know either. And there's also, too, like improv's always had this problem, or this problem of perception, too, is that there are a lot. At my least charitable, I have said, and I believe it. I don't want to say it a lot, but I do believe it, that there is a epidemic of lazy hack comedians who did improv, who did and are doing improv because they do not have the discipline or the intestinal fortitude to do sketch or stand-up comedy. Mm-hmm. They want to show up, do some lazy offensive jokes and hack stuff and steamroll in the scene, mm-hmm. wear their street clothes, invite their same 4 buddies, get that quick, like, mm-hmm. main line to the vein of instant feedback, and then go to the bar and have a bunch of beers with those guys and talk about how funny they were.
Yeah.
That's it. Like if this global pandemic, which is horrible, if there's any silver lining to our art form, I'm hoping a lot of those people never come back.
Yeah, honestly,
never come back to
it. I want the form to be for people who want to engage with other people, because that's inherently what it is. So if you're not willing to engage with other people, I don't need you around improv.
It's you have fundamentally misunderstood the purpose of the art form. Mm-hmm. I was just going through this the other day when people were talking about, like, well, when we come back, how can we afford to do social distancing? If we don't do social distancing, should we wait until you don't need to have social distancing before we open it? Because like the Pack Theater is like 42 seats. It's a black box theater. It's next mm-hmm. to each other. I haven't had these conversations. Yeah, I haven't. Yeah, perfect, right? I haven't had these conversations with anyone in the Pack. I don't want anyone to think that I'm talking about official stuff. I have stepped down from my own duties. I'm talking about just general when I've talked to different ADs and different theater owners and performers from around the country. And I keep going back to the idea of like, well, we don't have the budget or whatever to like do test screenings and do all the kind of like cleaning in between shows and social distancing at a 50 seat theater means you have 10 people in there. I don't think you can't justify, you're not even going to pay to keep the lights on, much less pay any of your employees or anything like that.
Most theater is going to need a 80 or 90 capacity.
For sure. I just go back to the thing of like, and then it came up randomly in somewhere else where someone was like, well, I mean, do we do this thing? Like, what if they haven't been vaccinated? I'm like, well, look, if someone hasn't been vaccinated because of a medical condition or an immunity, they know that they're taking care of their own personal health. We will tell them that we love them. We empathize that they're staying home, or that, maybe they shouldn't come in, and maybe we can, give them a discount or something, a future show, to let them know that we see them and, mm-hmm. and we empathize with their plight. Mm-hmm. But if someone's trying to come into my theater or much less perform that and saying proudly that they haven't been vaccinated because it's a personal choice, how can I possibly ever trust that person to take care of me on stage?
Right.
Fuck out of here.
Right.
You are basically, if you know what, it is your personal choice. Your personal choice is I don't want to do fucking improv anymore because I don't fucking care about people.
Right.
And I'm telling you up front, a 500,000 people died in this country alone, and I don't give a fuck.
Right.
I'm not going to wear a piece of fabric over my stage. Now, allow me to tag into your scene
right.
and
Let me
take care of you.
Let me touch you and do a talking head scene.
Yeah.
12 inches in front of your face.
Get out, yeah, so you can do your close talker character again. Get out of here.
I don't need it. I don't need
that. That guy's full stop. Does not need to be here.
Well, to somewhat finish what you were wondering about, how I think it will come back, and maybe even what I think should happen, I do think we've learned so much over the last year about there's all the social stuff that we've been grappling with.
Drop the science.
Right.
Drop that science on me right now. Go where you're going. I loved it.
There's so much we're learning about racism, and that it also involves Asians, people. That's still racism. It's not just what's happening to Black people or Hispanics. It's also, let's talk about all kinds of bigotry here. You know, you're not being woke if you're not aware of Asian hate or transphobia or Islamophobia. You know, like all ageism. Like, we've got to address these things in a real way. And of course, we've been for several years facing systemic sexism in how our society is set up. I think we have to. Those are obvious things that we have to think about as we move forward here. And I think most places will try to do that. I think as far as how to set up theaters so that they are aware of that, I think you just have to have a lot of people that you're engaging with. It can't only be who you're hiring, because you have to step outside of your bubble, your improv bubble, in your improv community world, and engage with some people who don't do anything with improv, but they're experts on these issues, and you engage with them on how they handle it. And I think it's also incumbent upon theaters, if you're going to bother having employees, to approach things the way the corporate world has been trying to approach things as far as addressing these issues in the workplace, because they have been doing sensitivity seminars for a long time, and those seminars aren't happening at theaters. And it's like, but you're supposed to be the ones who everyone says is so liberal and gets this stuff, and you're not doing it. But corporate America is already on, like, addressing this stuff. Of course, there's still a lot of garbage people in the corporate world, but I'm just talking about addressing it.
Yeah, a lot of times I hear the argument of like, well, we're a small theater, we can't afford that. I was like, do you know how many nonprofits do this stuff?
Right.
They're set up to do this for stuff. Also, do you know how many people that would volunteer their time just to be like, oh, thank God you're asking me to do this.
Right. You don't have to pay them. You don't have to worry about money, because they're not offering offering their services for you to give them money. They're saying, yeah, I'll give you some material to go over. Like, this is just, you have to engage with people who are studying this stuff and made it their life's work to deal with these social issues.
It's not like you're at a party and you find out a guy is a lawyer and then you ask for free legal advice and that guy's like, ugh. You find out someone's a social worker or someone that works in equity or diversity structures, and then you go, like, you meet them at a party, you ask them about it, they're dying for you to ask them about it. Oh my God, here's where you go. Can you have your email? Do you have an Instagram? Can I send you some stuff? Like, they will knock you down to show you where the stuff is you can go for it. Yeah.
And so I think that's some of what's going to have to happen. I know that Amy Poehler said in an interview that they're working with a a group that is deals with these sort of matters. And I think those just first and foremost, you have to start doing the things that you should have been doing all along if you're running a theater, which is considering other people outside of your perspective or culture.
It's one of my favorite things that we hear out here in Los Angeles. I would love to give credit where credit's due, but I've just heard too many people say it, especially people of color in the entertainment business, who are just like, when the question is asked, well, how can we be better about diversity hires? It's always like, well, number one, stop calling them diversity hires, and number two, hire them. Problem solved.
Right.
Problem solved.
Right.
We just don't know where we can find all these talented black people. Like, they're everywhere. Just hire them. Interview them. Like, oh, we have to spend all this money on getting creative on how we're going to be able to have more representation. Well, stop calling me like Heather Campbell is like that. You know, that's my girl. She's just like, she's been hearing for 20 years how funny she is. That you're a great female writer. Oh my God.
I hate it.
Can I just be a great writer? Can I just be a great writer? Can
As if it's some other kind of thing. Yeah. It's still just writing.
Yeah.
Like
it's the same thing when the Me Too movement started coming. Like I thank God I only had to do it a couple of times to people like that are friends of mine and I care about their opinion and if I see them ever again. And overwhelming majority of them were like, you're right, that's cool with that. But whenever it came up of like, oh, they're just doing this or they're just acting it out or whatever, I was like, I'm sorry. I don't know a single of my female friends who want to be known as a rape victim before a funny sketch artist.
Right.
I just not. I'm a great actress is how I would like to be known first. No one is like, man, I hope that I walk into a party and everyone goes, ooh, there's that sexual assault victim. I got to get them on my improv team. Never. Never.
Yeah, exactly.
No one.
It's
no
not
one wants
something,
that.
Right. No one is bringing it up so it can get ahead in their career. They're bringing it up because it's terrible. And people who are getting ahead in the business are the perpetrators of the assaults. And that's worth pointing out. So I think there's a lot of that kind of stuff that has to happen. Knowing where your blind spots are.
Yes.
I think that's where it just has to be. And I think in regards to the structure, I do think you're onto something and you're right when you say the anticipation of stage time needs to be separated from the training. The training needs its own thing.
Specifically the training center. Because then people are like, well, then what do you do? I'm like, well, people in classes, we already do that. You know who the talented people are. You know who the talented people are who also are like super gung-ho about stuff and all that. And then I'll be like, hey, really great class, really having it. If you ever have anything, I'm not saying you should audition for Herald teams or house teams. I'm going to say, if you ever have anything that you want to pitch me as an idea for a show, feel free. My email is always up. My inbox is always open and all that. And then you can cut off a lot of that stuff because then it's like, all right, if you're going to be serious, show me that you're serious. Because if someone just comes up to me and says, hey, me and the three other white dudes that I perform in with class, we hang out, we're really kind of funny, we kind of want to we're called Mick Dicks, and we don't have a coach, but we kind of want to play on your stage. I'm like, okay, cool, well, where's your EPK? That's an electronic press kit. Did you not know that? Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were serious. I'm running a business here. Also, it better be the funniest thing in the history of the world, because since this is my business, this business is my values. A team of nothing but 23-year-old straight white guys isn't the audience that I'm marketing to. I'm trying to market to as broad of an audience as possible. So you better be the funniest goddamn thing on the planet. You better be 4 Seth Rogans that anyone is howling. Right? I want Sister Soldier to walk into my bar and go, what are they for? What? Okay, these guys are funny. Okay, they're funny. I get this. I get why they're on stage, right?
Right.
Like, because those are my values. And then, because also I'm going to run a place. This is me in my mythical place. I'm like, also, I pay people. I pay performers because I don't need you to keep my doors open. I have that from the laundromat. I have that from my classes.
Exactly.
I have my bar.
I wanted to say this when you brought up that there was a laundromat in this place.
Yeah.
In this it was a music venue. I like that it's something completely separate. It's not something that's all like running a restaurant. That's not a great idea as the keep the
No,
lights on thing, because that's as
no,
tough to do as running a theater. You want
of course.
something that is as practical as a laundromat, because you're always
Yeah.
going to make money with the
I'm going to
laundromat
rent this.
or something
Yeah.
like it.
Yeah, or I'm going to rent out the space. It's office space during the day, and it's an art
Hmm.
gallery and performance space at night. I am doing something that makes my nut, so that when someone comes to me, I say, "Okay, cool. Let us engage in a mutually beneficial agreement based solely on the quality of the art and creative vision that you want." I mean, if that fits with mine, great. Because I think the future is not these huge improv institutions; it's coalitions, it's collaborations.
Mm.
I think keeping it a small, bespoke, almost to the section of like, like you want to make sure that you're getting out of your comfort zone and your blind spots, but
Mhm.
also like there's something to be said for mentorships. There's something to be said about um, apprenticeships,
Mhm.
and a lot of that is what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to put my money where my mouth is. Like, I look out for Al. She's our girl. We love her.
Yeah.
But like, so I'm her, Naz, a few others. My girl Becky Sanders. Like, I go out of my way to make sure that I am mentorship and then letting them
That's
know
dope.
about opportunities
Mhm.
and picking because if I'm putting my money where my mouth is, just how to do better with diversity hires, hire them, right?
Mhm.
I do that with School of the Arts people. The film school I went to, I hire graduates on stuff. I constantly have done that. And then I feel like having those small bespoke places where everyone is, what's the word I'm looking for? Everyone has been vetted
Mhm.
and has been around for a long time and and then you start working with smaller little theaters. I would prefer, instead of three theaters all fighting over a small audience in a major city, which is ridiculous,
Mhm.
and then having people sign non-compete clauses and all that shit,
Right.
have 40 different little unique theaters in one place that will all work together for like
Mhm.
big events, like tentpole events, like once a year festivals or whatever.
Mhm.
We're all helping each other and collaborating. But also if your town just becomes known as like, oh, well, you go out to dinner and you see a cool, funny comedy show. Where? Oh, well, where do you want to go? What are you in the mood for? Are you more for a punk rock
Yeah.
vibe? Are you more for like a family festival thing? Oh, are you looking for something that's a little bit more like dance and creative? Like, it's theater.
Mhm.
People go to the Son of Simile here in Los Angeles to see brave, new, avant-garde works that are premiering. That's their thing. And then people go to like the Met to see Broadway, to see
Right.
big plays, like
Mhm.
to see like, hey, this is Top Gun Live, where we bring someone up on stage and they
Right.
play Goose, and the rest of us, all do it, and we give them they're reading their lines off, and like this is the musical place, this is the weird art place, and then you can make a night of it. You and I can go have dinner or like have early drinks, go to a place to see like, that was a nice like, that was an improvised genre show. That was cool. And then maybe we have another drink, and then we run into somebody that we know. We're like, oh, where you heading? Like, oh, we're going. Like, dude, it's like this weird. It's all I can tell you is that it's improvised. It's deathcore music, and it's all done with neon green puppets. We're like, well, it's 11 p.m. Let's go see that. Like, there's something for everybody, and all of us
Yeah.
working together that way, right? Just be your own thing. Be your
Yeah.
own thing. You don't have to
I
be
like
giant
that.
thing and give everybody on the planet, stage time.
Yeah, so that's I appreciate you sharing that, because it filled in some gaps of my understanding of where you're coming from with it. Because you aren't saying like no house teams because there shouldn't be meritocracy. Like, there's still like people auditioning in some cases or pitching their shows at least, So if somebody's real strong, they're still gonna like get something if they are serious about it. But what I like about what you're saying is it cuts out the cities where it's all the same, where all these theaters are operating the same way.
Yes.
And so there's no variety in what people can enjoy and engage with. And it also gives more opportunity for more people to perform, like if they met in classes and they had this idea, they can pitch that and get on stage. And the theater's like a magnet can still operate the way it's operating, but then there's also the Tank or whatever's new, like the Squirrel Theater that's coming. Or if the Pit comes back, I don't know, hopefully they'll be able to get 3 stages up again. Whatever it is, there's still opportunity for people to, and there are other theaters here. Like I don't know much about them, but there was an improv theater that went into UCB's vacated space when UCB moved to Hell's Kitchen. So there's opportunities, and if we can all work in concert just to point to each other to say like, oh, you want that kind of thing? Well, they're really great at that over there. And if it's not all based on the same idea of like where you take the classes and then you can get on stage, then I think you create more opportunity. And I think it would be nice if, there's like the Saturday teams, just because I think you probably would have to have some consistency in some of these bigger theaters of like.
Of course.
But obviously,
but it's above board then. But then it's all above board.
Exactly.
I think you're dead on where it creates not only more opportunities for stage time, but more variety of opportunity of stage time.
Right.
I'm a big believer in the idea of like pitch the show that fits the aesthetic of the theater that you want to perform at. You can't put Breaking Bad on CBS. That's not their thing. That's not what they do.
Right.
But also people are into lots of different things. So if you're like, because I have a healthy improv scene that has multiple theaters that are their own niche thing that we all collaborate and support together, and no one's banned from any other place aside from being a shithead or a problematic or a monster, right? There's no non-compete clauses. Sunday night I do comedy sports, and I'm on a blue team there, and I really love doing that. Monday I do the drop-in jam just because I feel like it. Wednesday is my sketch team where we do it in this. In the back of this bookstore, and it's all based on fairy tales, and I'm really into that because I'm a high school teacher. Friday night is when I do Your Fucked Up Relationship. That's the 10 o'clock show where I'm allowed to drop F-bombs and all that. And then Saturday is for me and my husband, right? And we just you can do all those things that you're still performing 4, 5, 6 a night. I think where a lot of places get into trouble is like, there are 3 or 4 places that are all doing the exact same stuff, wondering why the scene isn't alive with like customers or audience members, or you're like, I can't believe I'm not performing 4 times a week at this one place because everyone else I see that does is clearly part of the cool kids club or the clique that's at this place spread around. And then the second thing I believe in when it comes to that, very, very hard, and I got this from Miles as I've gotten so many other things, is that the second that you think the theater needs you more than you need it, you should move on. You should go to a different place. And what I mean by that, I mean that as a positive sense. If you aren't getting what you want out of the theater, you're not getting on the house teams, but go start your own thing.
Right.
Please do. We all like it may not, like you said, it may not be anything personal. We just don't have space for you. Start your own thing, create more of the healthiness. Or like when I was booking the pack, like there's nothing I loved more. Again, we're a 42-seat black box theater, right? So when Stacey Rumacher and John Conroy and Cash Abdul Malik come to me and say like, hey, we want to take the nightcap with Stacey Rumacher. We're going to move it to a bigger theater. We need more space. We need a place that has a working bar because it's a drinking type of show. It's that kind of late night. I'm like, yes. Are you telling me that your show has become so successful that you've outgrown this? Then I did my job.
Yeah.
That's my fucking job. And then I want people to go like, hey man, if you really want to build up a show, you should get your start in the Pack Theater. Go talk to O'Connell. Because if you do your show there within a year, look at Stacy. Look at Roy Shockley and the Color Collective and what Dwayne has been able to do with those guys, playing different places. You want to start your show there, and a year or 2 from now, you'll be playing bigger venues. And then I get the cream of the crop. Then I get people pitching me their best ideas because they're like, look, I saw what happened with this show, and this show. Can we do them? Like, all right, does it fit our aesthetic? Does it fit our don't be boring kind of, evolved? That's cool. I handpicked everything, and almost all of them were either so successful that they were happy where they were, or so successful that they moved on to another place, or were successful enough for as long as they needed to be, to then they didn't need to be on our stage anymore. That's it. That's the other thing. Alex Fernie talks about that. He's like, don't look at Herald teams as something you just do forever. That's not how TV shows work. It's a season. It's a season. It's a season of television. And if you get 3 years of a Herald team, that means you got 3 seasons of a TV show. That's impressive.
Yeah.
TV shows are not meant to go like, yeah, there's WWE Raw, there's The Simpsons, but television shows that go 5 years are considered to be fucking runaway successes.
Yeah.
If you got 5 years of a show at an improv theater, dude, take a bow.
Yeah.
You did it. Like, it's okay. It's okay. You got out of it what you need to get out of it. Go do something else. Please start your own thing so I can come and perform at your place. Right?
Well, there it is.
I'd love to have a night off. Yeah. Just show up and be fabulous and play. Oh, I don't have to produce anything. Fuck yeah. Let's do it.
Well, thanks so much for coming on and talking about all that. You have an open invitation on this podcast.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I can't wait to have him on again. I enjoyed that conversation as I always do. I love passionate people, so I got to have him on again. What were your thoughts about what we were talking about? Please share them with us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at ThereItIsPod. And you can find out stuff that Brian has going on. Brian has a film called Bloodsucking Bastards. It's on Amazon Prime. I've seen it and really enjoyed it. It's a lot of fun and it has a great cast. Joel Murray's in it. Pedro, the Mandalorian, Pascal is in it. So go check that out. Again, it's on Amazon Prime. And check out what we've got going on ThereItIsPod.com. Until next time, be good to each other.
The music for the theme song was created by Neil Brooks. The rap was written and performed by Nick Acevedo. The logo for There It Is was created by Jeff Prater. The There It Is podcast is produced by Jason Farr.
Hi, we're the Phalasite Corporation. We have a 4 o'clock meeting. Meeting's canceled.